Welcome to Psych Sessions Careers, a podcast about how students can identify and prepare for careers that fit their unique interests and how instructors can help. I'm your host, Stacey Spencer. Whether you're a student trying to figure out what you'll do with your undergraduate psychology degree, an instructor who's looking to add to what you're already doing to support career preparation, or an instructor who wants to help but doesn't know where to start, these conversations are for you. Let's talk about careers. Hello, Dr. Dave Strohmetz. How are you?
I'm doing fine. Thank you.
So thank you for being with me today. I'm excited.
Happy to be here.
I'm excited to talk with you. I see you around at conferences and always enjoy our conversations. And so here's one that we're going to get to have again, one-on-one with other people listening in this time. Okay, so I want to give a little background for the audience. You are the chair and you are a professor of psychology at the University of West Florida.
That is correct.
Okay. You teach research methods in social psychology. Right now, mostly social psych is what you've shared with me.
That's correct. As chair, I only can teach one course a semester.
All right. Now, it makes sense you teach social psychology because your master's and doctoral degrees are in social and organizational psychology, right?
That's correct. From Temple University.
From Temple University. And it makes sense that you have taught research methods and are very prepared to teach research methods, not just because you're a social psychologist, but also because you're co-author of a textbook with Gary Lewandowski and Natalie Ciarocco. And that textbook is Discovering the Scientist Within.
That's correct.
Research Methods in Psychology.
Yep.
And you're up to the third edition.
Yeah, we're quite excited about it. Our textbook is the one with the puppies on it. In every edition, we add another puppy. So we want to keep building the brood.
I have a puppy picture I'd like to submit to add to the brood. if there's any application process and whether or not your puppy can make it to the cover. She would be with me normally, but she's playing with friends today. So now another thing I have learned about you is you're a counselor for the psychology division of the Council on Undergraduate Research. Can you tell me a little bit about what that role entails? And a little bit of the Council on Undergraduate Research for people who don't know about the Council on Undergraduate Research.
So Council of Undergraduate Research is really an organization whose main focus is on supporting and promoting undergraduate research in various fields. I find it kind of a companion to the Society for Teaching of Psychology. STP's focus is on what we do in the classroom. CUR seems the focus is on outside of the classroom. And it's also very interdisciplinary. It started in the natural sciences, chemistry, and there's divisions in the humanities, et cetera. As a psychology division counselor, we really focus on how can we promote undergraduate research. So we do have some awards for travel for undergraduate students. We have an award for a research mentor. And really focusing on how people can better integrate research into the undergraduate experience, both in and outside of the classroom. Great.
So another thing you've co-authored with Natalie Ciarocco is the Employable Skills Self-Efficacy Survey. Now, I've discussed this in detail with Natalie in another episode, so we're not going to go into all the detail about that. If people want to learn more about it, we can go there. But the key to that is I'm going to come back to it, but I really do want to talk about skills and employable skills and the value of that to our students and understanding what those are. But first, I want you to tell me about the students at your university. How would you describe them in terms of their characteristics?
So UWF, University of West Florida, is in Pensacola, Florida, and which is really far out in the panhandle. Most people don't realize how far west we are. And it is a military town. You have the naval base that's here, the air station. UWF is a regional comprehensive, and we tend to have a lot of students who transfer here after doing a 2-year degree or dual enrollment, or they are the Life Happens group where, they they might get married, jobs, and then they want to come back and finish their degree. And I bring this up because we have people such a wide range of socioeconomic status, academic ability. And if you look at their age, the median age seems to be about 24 or 25.
Okay, so it's an older group than you might see at a school that is a more traditional cohort of students coming out of high school, doing their degree in 4 to 5 years and moving on.
Correct. And in fact, if we have more traditional age students, they tend to be much younger. We have, because of dual enrollment in high school, they're graduating at 19 or 20. So we'll have students at both ends of the extreme, which is very novel. And also having just the socioeconomic status, the working hard to go to school. My colleague, Jane Hallinan, who I think you've already spoken to, describes our students as being the Rosie Riveter mentality. That is the, I will get things done. Tell me what I need to do. And there's a real earnestness to it.
So then I'm curious if students are, wow, I can only imagine what it's like to have those students in the same classroom. Some really great opportunities because of that, because they have very different experiences that they can share and talk about in regard to different topics that may be coming up in the course. But also the challenge of they must have very different needs. Or in the context of our conversation in this podcast, they're in different places in thinking about careers and thinking about their education and how it fits with their future. So what is your experience with that? The dual enrollment students, where are they in thinking about jobs and work in the future? How they're going to use their degree, for example? What is that group like?
That group tends to not be as aware of all the possibilities you can do in psychology. So for us, from my perspective, it's how do you help them understand of all the different things you can do as a psych major? Because often they want to become a psychiatrist or a serial killer profiler, that kind of thing, whatever they're watching on TV. But one of the interesting things we do have an online BA program as well, which really draws a lot of students who are, the Life Happens groups in their raising families. And they're already in their careers. They're trying to enhance their careers. So you're absolutely correct. They're coming to UWF with very different perspectives. But what I think is the common element is they tend to be very pragmatic in their approach to their education. They're not if I said to them, I'm going to help you just learn to think like a psychologist, their response is, how are you going to help me get a job?
Right.
And then I'll follow up. My follow-up is usually, well, you probably already have a job. How can I help you find a career, if not a calling? And I talked about that. But I think, and this is going in our discussion about skills, is focusing on skills helps us address the pragmatic question of why do I need to take this course? I'm never going to do research. I am not going to be a social psychologist. I'm not going to be a cognitive psychologist. Why do I need to take a course on child development? And then my response will be, well, you may want to become a parent, or you may want to become a better parent. Understanding about child development can help you along those roads in that path.
Or you may have a job where you're working with children and understanding where they are developmentally will absolutely influence those interactions. And especially if you're not in a role as a child psychologist or someone who's working with children in a clinical way, but children show up in a variety of occupations as the group you're serving. So it's interesting. So when you talk about the younger students, what I'm hearing is they really need a lot of career exploration. And the older students may be thinking, this degree is going to help me with what I'm doing, but you're still adding some career exploration to that because you're hoping that they'll see there are many other things that this degree could help me do that maybe they haven't even considered.
You're absolutely right. And I think the students at both ends are focusing on the first job after college. And I keep thinking the next job so that they may say, well, I'll never give presentations. And I go, but if you get the job you want, which is always a high paying job, you're going to have to present to people. It's better to learn these skills now and get practice.
Yeah. And what they mean by presentation may not be in front of a class of 20 to 50 students or whatever that enrollment might be. And it may not be at a professional meeting like we do, but it might be a group of colleagues, 4 or 5 sitting around a table, and it's still a presentation. There's still sort of an expectation of the organization and delivery of that and the communication of the information through that. So yeah, it's true. I think there's a lot of misperception about what life looks like in the work side of it all. We have these abstract ideas of what it means to go into the world of work. And even people who are working, I think, and they're thinking about another career, they're still thinking of that occupation in the abstract, what they think it means to do that. And then there's that sweet spot in the middle, which is a lot of shared skills across occupations, and then the specific piece that makes that unique and exciting and a good fit for the person. And I think we just don't have a lot of opportunities to support students as they're exploring and thinking about what's a best fit for them. When the first question is, well, what can I do with this degree? We know the answer, it just could go on and on. Once we start naming more than, I don't know, even 5 different directions that are not traditional psychology, the eyes start to glaze over when we get to 10, 15, 20. And then when we start talking about bachelor level jobs, have job titles that you aren't even aware of. You've never thought of that job title because we tend to grow up thinking occupational titles.
Right.
So I'm curious about the older group coming in who have job titles. They're not necessarily walking around with occupational titles. Now, if you're in a military area, you've got people who might have those titles associated with their service, right? But it's still not maybe the way we think about it when we're kids. So I'm curious, did you in your K through 12 education ever have a moment when you were asked to declare what you wanted to be when you grew up?
Yeah, absolutely. And I could tell you exactly what it was. I went to college to become a lawyer. That's why I picked my school based on that.
But where in that K through 12? So when in that, were you in high school and someone says, hey, you got to pick something if you're going to go to college? Or was it much earlier that you kind of declared to your family, friends, I want to be a lawyer? When did that happen?
I think it was partly because of my working class background. If you do well in school and you like to argue, people say you should be a lawyer. And that's kind of where I ended up thinking about that. And I went to a small liberal arts college, and there was a law school next to it. And I realized I didn't want to do that. And I was in lots of different classes of liberal arts college. And every week I went to be a different major. Finally, I focused on psychology because I really liked the classes. And I was pragmatic in the sense of, well, if I have to take lots of classes in a particular area, I might as well take classes I like. And it was interesting, my experience as an undergrad. I ended up doing research with a faculty member, and I was developing skills. I had no idea I was doing that. When I graduated, I had no idea what I wanted to do. Applying for a lot of jobs. I ended up getting a research position because of the skills I developed as an undergraduate.
Right.
And then that led to a whole host of other opportunities. But it was funny. No one ever asked me, well, did you have a course in cognitive psychology? It was more of, oh, you presented at a research conference. Oh, you did this particular study. Oh, you written something up. So I think that's where we sometimes lose sight of, as professors, of the opportunities we want to provide students to develop and demonstrate skills as they're learning the course material. And I think and I will say this has been a big change in my career, thinking about this for the past 30 years, because when I first started, I never thought about skills. But now I'm thinking, the content I've talked about has changed. We learn more, but what we want them to do with it has not. Reading, writing effectively, thinking critically. And I want to go back real quick. You asked the question about what do you say to a student about what can you do in psychology? I will tell you my answer is usually not to tell them what they can do. I usually focus on what they can't do. And I said, well, you're not prepared for a job that does not involve interacting with any people. You're not prepared for a job that does not involve any quantitative reasoning or reading, basically anything that involves people, reasoning, writing, communicating. We help prepare you for that.
Yeah. So it's kind of focusing on the skills from the opposite. So yeah, anything that doesn't involve all these skills, well, you're not going to be prepared for that because you have all of these abilities, right?
Exactly. And in fact, if you may say, well, I'm not prepared to be a nurse. Well, but you now have a background that'll help you get into nursing school.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I bring up nursing because we tend to have a lot of students who at least start in psychology before they get into the BSN program. Mm-hmm. So there's a reason why.
Right. Yeah. I think nursing and psychology have so many shared priorities and just a way of thinking about people. And I think they fit very well together. I think one of the challenges is students want to go directly into the nursing first and not really taking the time to do a little bit more exploration or taking a broad range of the foundation courses that will help them think about the patients they're going to be working with. And the good thing about nursing is it does value psychology, and prereqs include human development. At a minimum, you need to understand human development. So it's interesting because I'm also a social psychologist, and I think about it's so easy for me to understand the value of a social psych course to any career because of the concepts that we talk about. And one of the skills that employers care a lot about is the ability to collaborate with others and teamwork. And a social psych course or departments that also have organizational psychology as a course, those are really great opportunities to not just develop skills, but also understand the concepts. And so you have more than the skills. I refer to that as the secret sauce. And I'm probably going to be saying that a lot throughout the podcast. But really, that's what makes the psych major different is you don't just have the ability to work effectively in a team, but you know the obstacles to effective group decision-making and all of those kinds of things. So, yeah.
Well, let me follow up on that because that ties into an activity I do in my social psychology class that really blends the career exploration, application, and skill building. The textbook I have has the applying social psychology chapters at the end, the ones I can never get to, just because of timing. So what I do is I have them put them in groups, and based on their interests. And the three chapters in the book I use are like applying psychology to business, to legal, or health and wellness. And so I form them in groups, and the group is tasked with developing a game that would teach concepts from that chapter. So two things are happening. One is they have to really get into the chapter, and here's the application of social psychology, as we were just talking about. But they also have to collaborate with each other to engage in creative activity. And it ends with a sales pitch to the rest of the class demonstrating their game. But part of the skill building, I talk about collaboration skills. They also are tasked with evaluating each other, how well they're doing, and they're each other people's perceptions of your leadership skills and things like this. And that's really was intentional to help develop collaboration skills and leadership skills. And because you've just talked about the group dynamics chapter, now you start applying social loafing issues. How do you combat that? And things like this to your experience. So this, to me, this is a blending of I'm having them do a group project, but really the whole purpose is not necessarily the group project itself, but rather what they're learning along the way.
Right. And I honestly think that it's better for students to explore applications of psychology by being tasked with something like this assignment, this activity, than to stand in front of them and communicate that, or just leave it to the book to explain it. That engagement and thinking more deeply about it and making those connections, I think goes a long way with them. So I think this is such a great example that instructors who are in other content courses could adapt to their courses, where they're tasking students with what are some of the applications of these concepts to these different occupational areas. And, depends on, maybe some people say, well, how does my course fit with those three buckets, right? You talked about I remember you had health and wellness because I always think about that, but you said law. What was the other one? Business.
Yes.
Okay. So we could think about that and that may be really challenging, but also really, really beneficial. And the beauty of those kinds of activities is I always learn a lot from my students. Another way to do it is say, well, here's the course content, and can you find jobs out there where you're applying these concepts? I think that's just a real easy way to go. And then students come back with really, really great connections, and also get to see what it looks like to read what a job description actually looks like. I think that's part of the abstract is there's this idea of these jobs out there. The reality is written in the job descriptions that are posted through these search engines. And when you start to read those, my students have discovered some real peace in that. They feel so much better about what they're doing because they see what they're doing in school showing up. Those skills that we've been talking about are showing up in the job descriptions. I'm thinking about, I would love for students to be listening to these episodes. And I'm thinking about the student who doesn't have a professor who's incorporating an activity or an assignment like that for them. What's something that you think a student could do on their own then to be making connections like that?
So I think what they have to think about is their degree in totality. I mean, people tend to be very short-sighted. I need to take this course, check it off, move on to next. But rather start being strategic and thinking about, well, I don't know what specific job I'm going to do, but what are the types of experiences I should get? And then pick your courses based on that. And you mentioned about the Employable Self-Efficacy Scale. Part of that was designed to help students identify weaker areas. And so I guess when you're saying you're picking courses in psychology electives, you might have one that does involve a presentation. And instead of running from that, maybe you say, I need to challenge myself with that. Yep. Now, I know I'm being kind of idealistic here, but I think that sometimes if we start realizing that college is the perfect time to develop skills without high stakes attached to it. The fact is, if I get a B or C in the class, that I'm learning. If I do poorly in the workplace, I could lose my job and can't pay for my mortgage. I mean, there's high stakes. This is the perfect time to take risks. Particularly employers are not going to be asking, did you get a 392 or a 388? They're really focusing on, tell me the tangible experiences you've had that demonstrate this work. I always think about my previous institution, Monmouth University in New Jersey. Students had to do a research thesis, and they would just describe it as, well, I did a thesis. And we had to help them reframe it in terms of, no, you demonstrate project management skills, creativity, ethical behavior, things like this. Talk about that, and the employers will help with this. So kind of long-winded. I think I kind of answered your question.
No, I think that's all really great. I was nodding vigorously through all of that because there's a couple things in there. One is the checkbox mindset, the running away from the short game versus the long game. You know, when we hear that so-and-so's class, you have to do a presentation. Well, I'm not going to take that because I'm terrified. I get that. And I probably played that short game as an undergraduate, but thinking longer term. And I love that piece. This is the safe place to do it. Your grade isn't going to result in you losing anything. And by the way, the grade on that one presentation is not your entire grade for the course. And there's a lot to be learned from that. So really challenging yourself and we think it's a safe space. Of course, for the students, it doesn't always feel safe to stand in front of your colleagues. If my classmates knew that I was a professor now, my college classmates, they would be shocked because I didn't say a word. And whenever I needed to give a presentation, I would be so excited about the topic and I wanted to share that knowledge. And I'd get up in front of that class, the cortisol would be released and my brain would shut down. I could not retrieve anything. I felt like I wasn't able to get anything out. but I still wanted to do it so badly that I knew, okay, I'm going to have another opportunity and I'm going to need to do that. And what are the things that I can do for myself? So now I'm thinking, what are the things I can do for myself that are not about the content? The content was fine. It was in that moment. How do I manage my stress response? How am I managing that? What kinds of exercises and breathing, or my focus, the way I'm conceptualizing this? What is creating that release for me? What am I afraid of? So as a psych major, just thinking through, oh, wait, I have those concepts I can build from, I can incorporate here to be better at it. But yeah, the fact that I talk for a living now would really shock people who knew me back then. Yep. And I say that, so if we do have student listeners, that they're understanding that we're not born into these things, that if we want something badly, then some of the hard hits along the way are the opportunities to get closer to that thing we want to do so badly.
You were talking about tying into social psychology. I keep thinking about social facilitation. Mm-hmm. And, as an earlier lecturer, I was terrible. I'm sure every professor wants to go back and apologize to the students in the first class. But you get better with practice, mm-hmm. and even anxiety response, and that's social facilitation. And, the more practice students have with presentations or with writing or collaborating, you get better and you learn more and more. Mm-hmm. I think that's part of the value of what we do in the class. We're a safe space where we're engaging in content and we have a purpose for discussing the material, but we're also doing it in a way that helps develop other skills. And mm-hmm. those skills, I think, permeate across all your courses. And I think that's important for a quality curriculum to have. You have students who take a course in cognitive course and child development and biological, but what's the theme that runs through it? And I think that's important. And I also think it's important to take a developmental approach to curriculum so that what you expect of students at the 400 or 4,000 level classes is more than what you expect at the introductory level. Right. Allow them to explore, get better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So it doesn't feel like so much wrapped in, so high stakes in the earlier parts. That's where we really want to have the lower stakes opportunities for them to just practice. I'm standing up in front of a class. I'm not being graded on a presentation, that kind of thing, or working with a group on something that's not going to be graded. So I'm not going to have to worry about those fears of, will they affect my grade? But those opportunities are really, really valuable. So, gosh, there's so many different ways I want to go with what you were talking about, because there's just so many opportunities in our courses. I think that the gap is the explicit articulation of. So we think of what our courses are doing as instructors. We think about maybe gen ed requirements. Maybe we're responsible for mapping our courses to those so that we can demonstrate we're contributing. And general education requirements are almost always a list of the skills that employers value. We just describe them differently. We call them something that is essentially what employers value. And we do that and we can do that, but students aren't necessarily put in a position to track what they're doing. And one of the things I like about the Employable Skills Self-Efficacy Survey is it has evolved now online where students can create an ID and they can track that. But it's so valuable for planning when you see, well, I'm not really there with that. But also students need to check their assumptions about what the skills are that employers are going to value, and not to assume when we say these skills that we mean clinicians, that we mean researchers or professors. We are really talking about employers across occupational domains. Mm-hmm. And thinking about the course research methods, and when we talk about research opportunities, I think there's a reasonable expectation or an appropriate expectation that we are thinking students will become researchers, but that is not that doesn't truly reflect what we want. I didn't say that very well. I think the assumption by students is that if we're requiring them to take research methods and we're encouraging them to get research experience, that we're doing that because we want them to be researchers, that we want them to go to graduate school. And I think that is so important that we make it clear that it's the skills you're developing The topic doesn't have to be exactly what you want to do. The tasks you're doing could be completely different from somebody else who's working in research. When you think about getting involved in research, I think students are afraid they're going to have to design the study. They're going to have to write the research report. They're doing the things that are especially hard in a course, but that's not how we're thinking about it. And that piece, I think we can do a lot better with. And you talking about skills and putting it in the context of these are the skills you're working on for employers. And by the way, we say employers, but we also mean graduate school. Mm-hmm. Graduate programs want people to show up with those same skills as well. So we're right on the same page with this. Okay. Well, I was wondering, would you like to play a game?
Oh, that'd be fun.
All right. So this is what I do with my guests. I find several jobs that are available in your area. So I just want there to be a nice geographic representation of the kinds of jobs that I find, as well as diverse jobs that I find. And I vary up what the game is. Your game will be, I'm going to read a list of responsibilities and skills that are included in the job descriptions for these positions. And your challenge is to figure out what the job title is. What I'm going to leave out is the setting. Okay. So it makes it extra challenging for me not to include some keywords like who the person might be working with or for. All right. All right. So let's start with the first one. The person in this position will interview individuals to determine their needs, interests, and motivations, to understand their goals and address any concerns they might have. They'll guide individuals through a process, address their questions, schedule appointments, gather necessary documents, and ensure that testing is completed. They will uphold standards and comply with related governmental regulations. They will follow up with interviews and assist in resolving any issues and address concerns. Complete daily activity reports, maintain confidentiality. We want them to have excellent interpersonal communication and presentation skills. Public speaking experience is a plus. And be highly motivated and solution-oriented. What might that job be?
Case manager?
No, wouldn't you think? If I put in patient in all of that, case manager.
I was thinking about, we have a lot of students who go into entry-level positions in the mental health field here. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking of a case manager or behavioral technician, things like this. So that's not it. Now I'm thinking customer service, but you start me off with the testing. Mm-hmm. And you say governmental regulations. So now I'm thinking government. And then I thought, you're describing a department chair.
Well, this is a bachelor level job, so I'm not sure that it's definitely not department chair, I can tell you.
But I will say that, I interview students, I make sure, or graduate admissions committee. So there's so many different areas. So, do I have a lifeline?
I will be your lifeline. I will tell you what it is. But before I do, I just want to make the point that you first said case manager, and a lot of students are interested in doing that. Yes. What a lot of students tell us is they want to help people. This is clearly a job where you're helping people. You're supporting people as they're going through something. This is an admissions advisor. An admissions advisor for a university.
Yep.
Not admissions to a mental health facility, not admissions to anything else, admissions to you. So all those things that a student might think they would do in a clinical setting, they're really the same kinds of skills that we need for admissions. There's that, complying with regulations. There's following up. There's testing. You want to make sure the testing is complete. Now you know what the testing is, right? Yes. We need to make sure that they've finished all of that. And they're working with other people in that process. I'm not sure if I read a piece of that, but it is built in to it. But definitely dealing with a lot of student applicants and families and all kinds of things.
So it's funny you say that because, lot of students don't realize how they're being prepared for even jobs in higher ed.
That's
I'm
right.
thinking immediately at UWF, we have professional advisors.
Yeah.
One of them is a psychology major from UWF.
Mm-hmm.
And
well, guess what? You guys are hiring for another one of those because that was a job that I used with Jane.
Okay. There you go.
But she played a different game. Hers was, is this a bachelor level job?
Oh.
And at your school, it is, not everywhere, but that is really great experience to have. And not every, like I said, not every university has, our university requires a master's degree in higher education because the role is a little bit different than the role that your academic advisors have at that level. But yeah, it's another way of helping people.
Well, in fact, people don't realize how that could set you off on a particular career path because you start entry-level academic advisor and you might find yourself in the student life, residential life side of higher ed, or even career counseling. The person who runs our career center is a psych major. So there you go.
There you go. And I like knowing there's psych majors in those roles in career services because often when the psych major shows up in a career center, they're a little, the people who are the career advisors sometimes struggle with, how do I answer the question about all the things you can do? And so it's nice to have psych majors in there. All right, let's do another one. You up for it?
Sure.
Okay. Supervise and schedule staff members. Work closely with colleagues and leadership to provide excellent customer service. Build trusting and collaborative relationships with internal and external teams. Juggle multiple priorities and multiple requests. Effectively communicate needs to staff. I had to leave out a word there. Engage them in finding a solution. Maintain a professional and pleasing appearance and attitude at all times. I really liked that part of the job description. We're starting to see a lot more employers, including things like integrity and initiative, because those are characteristics that employers say, we'll let people go if they don't possess those qualities, if they don't demonstrate those. All right.
Can I jump in real quick on that? Just follow up and then I'll, of course, forgot the job description.
Yeah. Well, I've got more details that might help bring back.
What you're talking about right there, we talk about the issue of professional development, self-regulation. And I gave a talk recently talking about how we can help students develop in skills in very small ways. An example of this would be when we have students do presentations, asking them to address appropriately for that presentation. Even simple things of showing up for class on time, because what we just talked about, self-regulation and development, that's what employers want. And if students don't know what that means, they won't know how to address it.
I love that example. That's excellent. There are times that I will have forgotten to make it clear that this is a presentation and you should show up demonstrating that this is an important moment. And that includes how you dress. That includes you being on time, the audience being on time. You need to show up on time, even though you're not the presenter, or you're not absent the day someone else is presenting. This is also an opportunity for you to engage and demonstrate your ability to listen and respond appropriately with questions, whatever it might be.
Right. So the job title is not admissions counselor then. Everything you just said.
No.
Okay.
But let's see what else.
You said customer service.
Yeah, I like one of the details is must be able to communicate with individuals of varying socioeconomic backgrounds, have exemplary decision-making, organizational and interpersonal skills. Interpersonal comes up a lot in this particular profession. Be a person of high integrity and character, willing to embrace change and make a positive impact. Attention to detail, excellent verbal and written communication skills.
So I can imagine the type of job involves you are sitting there helping people to improve their lives, or they're probably engaging in something that they're having challenges. And so you're really trying to facilitate and make their lives better. The question is what area? And there's so many different areas.
That's right. Where you can do that.
And, that can go everywhere for someone who's struggling to accomplish some type, help them with, navigate the legal system so they become, they can get their checks or, so again,
It's not legal.
Technology is so broad. It's not legal.
It is.
But even think about that. You could field
certainly
customer service, public relations,
So I'm going to tell you what it is.
Yeah. And then we'll go, of course, because of hindsight bias, 2020, of course.
This is a guest services coordinator in a medical setting. And medical settings, hospitals, community medical centers, and so on, have individuals that it might be a patient coordinator, patient services, patient, there's just a lot of various titles around that. But that is the population you're serving. As people are coming in, they need to navigate a system, and your job is to help navigate that and figure out what systems are working in our navigation. So as we're trying to help people navigate, what can we improve in our navigation system? And so when we think about research methods, a lot of people in those roles are collecting data to help them figure out how to do it better. That's a research question. How can we improve this? Oh, we made this change. Did it improve? So that's that position. Let's do one more.
Make me feel better.
What, you think you're going to get one right? I didn't pick them.
Yeah,
so
I didn't
get
that.
right.
Yeah, I got a feeling that trip to Hawaii that you promised for winning the game is off the table.
Did I delete that from this recording? No, yeah, the trip to Hawaii. Wouldn't that be great? All right. So for this one, the objective of the position is to identify and assess needs, evaluate, coordinate, and ensure services and data integrity, monitor progress and evaluate reports, assist with the coordination of services, conduct outreach as needed. There's more. I need to turn the page. The person will have excellent assessment skills and intervention strategies, be able to act with high level of independent judgment, identify environment stressors, observe and report accurately, handle confidential information appropriately, have strong verbal and written communication, have awareness of social, economic, cultural, and environmental factors, have knowledge of professional ethics. I love this. Proficient in computer software applications and be able to act decisively when necessary to protect blank. I'll leave out the word at the end.
So I think I should take that job description and put it into my research method syllabus, because everything you just described is what I need to do as an ethical researcher. Think about, I can think of all the different things I cover in my methods class that addresses everything you said. Students say, oh, why do I need to learn SPS or some data management? You mentioned that.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm just vamping right now because I have
you don't know.
idea.
I'll tell you, because everyone's on the edge of their seat just wondering what this job title is. It's a placement specialist, again, in a health system, in a health network, a placement specialist. So we're in healthcare. We've got two different positions here. A lot of the skills are similar. The tasks are a little bit different. And let me ask you, in your area, what would you consider a reasonable salary for someone in their first position out of school with a bachelor's degree?
So
a person would be doing pretty good right out of college, making how much for your area? I ask area because obviously cost of living is important.
So it's funny you say that, because the state of Florida has metrics, and we get judged on what percentage of students, graduates, are making X amount of dollars after a certain time period. We were doing fine when the metric was $35,000 a year, but now it's 40. Where we're at now, that 40,000 seems to be a starting salary. Now, it's interesting you bring this up, because students will think, well, I need to be making $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 right out of college. No, that's think about your first starting. That's your starting, but you move up from there. And sometimes this is part of that short-sightedness. I remember having a student who turned down the job because it was too low, even though it would have been high-paying down the road.
Right.
So I think that's probably that 35, 40.
This position starts at $46,000 a year. So that is a really good starting salary. The other thing I think students don't really think about that we know is really important is what are the benefits. And with this position, the person is enrolled in a 401k matching program. They would have dental insurance, health insurance, life insurance, paid time off, and vision insurance. And all it says for education, bachelor's. See, I never select jobs, just so the audience knows, I don't select jobs that say you have to have a degree in something very specific. They may say such as, but rarely. And the reason students don't want to search for jobs with psychology in the keyword search is they're going to lose a lot of hits that are really interesting opportunities. The assumption is the employer writes psychology. It's only going to show up if the employer checked a box or specifically included the word psychology. Rarely do employers look that specifically at what your degree is in. So just like to underscore that point. So that was fun. I appreciate you getting them all wrong. I really like the fact that I think all of these positions, students could leave even just a research methods course and have many of those skills. But collectively through their psych major, we know they're hitting on the opportunity to develop and demonstrate those skills. One last thing about skills that's interesting to me is I find that students dismiss the skills they gain through their coursework because they think of their coursework as knowledge. When they're selling themselves through cover letters or interviews, their examples, they're not thinking back to the team project they did where they solved a problem or there was a conflict and how they resolved that. It's like what happens in school doesn't matter in the real world. Have you experienced any of that in your conversations with students?
Absolutely. And that's why in my classes, I repeatedly go back to the skills. So when we talk about the group project in my social psych, I explain to them exactly why we're doing this, collaboration skills. And I often get the argument, well, it's easier if I do it myself. Mm-hmm. I can't trust anyone. And I always point out that, the fact is that if you get the job you want, you're going to be working with people and you don't get the choice of who you get to work with. Often you have to work with coworkers, some of which you may love. Some people you may not be the best person for you to collaborate with, but you still need to do it. So here's a safe space and how we do it. And then you learn lessons on how to navigate. It may be a terrible experience working with the people in your class, but you'll learn lessons how to approach it down the road.
Right. What could you have done differently? What were the factors that may have contributed? I'm all about the contract and then going back and saying, how could we have written this contract better? How could we have approached this differently? When I have students, and I typically do this with any group that's meeting to work together for the first time, is stop and think about what are you bringing to the team? Talk to each other about your respective skills. Talk to each other about the skills that you would like to work on and that you may not be the best at that yet, but this is an opportunity for you to work on that. And then, at the end, did you actually tap into those strengths or did you go right into survival mode? Because a lot of them just default back to bad team habits, that, we left class. Yeah, we said we were going to communicate. Oh yeah, I'll respond to that text or email later. But really to take that time at the end to reflect back on what did I do well? What could I do better? So in the future.
I have an example of this, if you don't mind. After this team project, they had to give feedback to each other. And one student, the common complaint was this student would all of a sudden cancel and not come to a meeting. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of resentment. But this student has a young child, and she was like, well, I had to take care of my child. And I told them that at the beginning of the group project. And she was offended by the fact they thought she was not reliable. Mm-hmm. And I expressed to her, I said, did you ever remind them or explain to them why you missed the meeting? Not just I can't make it, but why? And because you can't assume that people will remember this. And she realized she didn't. And now hopefully she'll remember that. It's not showing up because every student, we all know we have life circumstances and everyone wants to help each other out, but you can't do it unless you don't know. And there's a skill to help communicate why something.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's the interpersonal communication piece. And I like to set my groups up with thinking about, people rarely set out to destroy a group project. Nobody wants that. typically what we're seeing is there are distractions in life that are getting in the way of them being 100% there for the team. And there are insecurities that people are uncomfortable with. And so some people cope with that by avoidance. And so what you're seeing is they may not be comfortable with the group. So, and we all go throughout a semester. I like my students to work in the same team all semester long. I think it's very powerful it takes weeks to get that comfortable trust to actually then be able to work on some of the harder tasks. But, say we're all going to have rough weeks. Tell the rest of your group, this is a particularly challenging week for me. So I'm not going to be able to bring my A game, but as soon as this is done, I'll be able to do even more next week than, maybe somebody else can. So really think about each other collaboratively that way. But again, it's making it explicit, articulating, telling them these feelings you have are normal in a group. And I also give examples that say, sometimes I end up on a committee and I look around that table and I think, oh, this is not going to be a fun experience. There's someone in here who is a challenge for me interpersonally, but I don't have a choice. I can't just do a bad job because there's someone working on this with me that challenges me in a variety of ways. So we could go on and on. This is two social psychologists talking about teams and teamwork and really wanting students to develop those kinds of skills. I've really enjoyed this conversation. I'm so grateful to you for your time. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we go?
No, I really appreciate what you're doing, Stacey. I mean, these are types of things that instructors really need to think about because we want to make a difference in our students' lives and a long-term difference. And I think as we talk about, we want them to be excited about our classes, but also excited how they can take what they're learning in our classes to their lives. And I'm very much focusing on let's make a difference in people's lives. And I will also say that we have to remember one class will not have a student create a skill. You're always honing them. I'm still doing that. So we have to think about this as always in a developmental mindset.
That's right. That's right. And giving them opportunities to demonstrate those skills in a way that might be tangible and a variety of tangible products. I know that you've got faculty who have a variety of really creative ways of demonstrating a skill and knowledge that kind of helps them to build more of a portfolio than, yes, I can do a traditional academic presentation or write a traditional academic paper, but that I can communicate that information in a variety of ways is really, really great. I also, I wanted to talk with you as a department chair more about how department chairs can support, but I really want to keep this to the time that we have. But I do encourage, if you're a department chair, to really think about what are some ways you can support faculty in including these things. And even if it's connecting with people who have a lot of experience doing this, I think those of us who are supporters of career preparation, it's a favorite topic to talk about. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.